All right. Good evening, everyone. Let us begin. So first of all, thank you to everyone for accommodating the earlier start time this evening. Begin by thanking our sponsors for tonight's shir. To thank Tzvi and Chevy Friedman for dedicating the shir tonight in memory of Chevy's father, Yoshua Yaakov ben Shalom Zichron Livracha, whose 14th yahrzeit is this week. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the neshama will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. To thank Rabin Schaefer for dedicating the shir tonight in celebration of the engagement of her son, Gil Kotler, to Nicole Berry Lieberman in Eretz Yisrael. Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov, and on the celebration on Erev Chanukah of Rabin's 6th decade on earth. I like that way of phrasing it. Again, great, excellent. And a thank you again to Elkaman Samuelson for dedicating the shir tonight in the schus of hearing good news in the future. Halavai Miras Hashem for all of us. With that, let us begin. So we are going to depart from our natural order and normal course of study on Wednesday nights. We're normally focused on Tehillim, focused on the Parsha, but it's not loud enough. Sorry, I don't run the AV department. I should run the AV department, but okay. So tonight, in Miras Hashem, we're going to focus a little bit more, not a little bit more. We're going to focus in Miras Hashem on Chanukah. I say this really before every Yom Tov, because every Yom Tov we normally switch up what it is that we normally learn in an effort to prepare for that which is ahead of us. The meaning of any experience is directly related to the amount you prepare for it. Chazal already teach us this concept when it comes to Shabbos. So for example, again, Chazal Gemara writes, Kol mi shetarach be'erev Shabbos, yochal b'Shabbos. Literally, again, if you work and you prepare on Erev Shabbos, on Friday, you'll eat on Shabbos. So of course, Chazal can't mean that literally because that's obvious. Obviously, again, you can't cook on Shabbos. So if you prepare on Erev Shabbos, ultimately, again, you'll enjoy Shabbos. What are Chazal teaching us? Chazal are saying that your Shabbos experience is directly related to what your Erev Shabbos is like. Erev Shabbos is the preparation. So if you are an 18-minute Jew, you know who you are, right? And again, you're always running by the skin of your teeth. Don't expect to tap into the tranquility of Shabbos because you're not preparing enough. Now, of course, that happens to all of us episodically. When it becomes a way of life, it's fundamentally problematic because not only is the stress often too much to handle week in and week out, but we know when you run into Shabbos and you're rushed and you don't have the chance at least just to take a deep breath before entering into the most sacred day of the week, by definition, your Shabbos is different. Shabbos night, sitting down at the Su'udah, is not the same when the stresses of the week are still melting off you. There's a concept, Chazal say, you have to prepare on Erev Shabbos in order to have an impactful and meaningful Shabbos Kodesh. And the truth is, the same is true with every other Yom Tov as well. If you want to reap the maximum benefit from any Yom Tov, if you want to reap the maximum benefit in general from anything in Yiddishkeit, by definition, it requires preparation. And the more preparation in advance, the more meaningful the event itself actually becomes. So now we come to Chanukah. So we're going to go into Chanukah, Miras Hashem, this coming Sunday night. B'sha'a tova u'metzlachos. And Chanukah is one of those Yamim Tovim where as soon as you kindle the menorah, you feel a wave of something coming over you. There's something that's happening. There's something that's different in the air. There's something that's different in the fabric of the day. But often we're not able to articulate what that difference is. So what we're going to try to do tonight a little bit is to try to understand wherein lies the unique message of Chanukah, and by definition, what is the avoda? What is our job over these days? So let's begin with the Gemara. Number one, the Gemara Masechah Shabbos writes as follows: My Chanukah. Okay, pretty straightforward question. What is Chanukah? What the Gemara is asking is, what is this holiday? The Tan Rabban and the rabbis teach, B'chafei b'Kislev Yomei de Chanukah Tamni Inun. On the 25th of Kislev, 8 days of Chanukah begin. We don't fast during these days. We don't deliver eulogies during these days. Why? This is the story we all know. Because remember again, the Syrian Greeks who tried to, remember, Judea was a vassal state already to King Antiochus, performed to King Ptolemy. So remember again, the Greeks were not interested in the physical annihilation of the Jews. They were interested in the spiritual annihilation of the Jews. When that failed, when they were not unable to accomplish, really, we'll call it rampant, well, there was rampant assimilation, but total assimilation, that's when they began to crack down physically on the Jews, ultimately ransacking the Beis HaMikdash. So what happened? We know the Greeks entered into the temple, they defiled all of the oils. Ukishagavra, Malchus Beis Chashmonai v'Nitzchum, when the Chashmonaim, who again, remember, weren't trained warriors, the Chashmonaim were a family of Kohanim. They were a family of Kohanim who took up arms, decided to fight back, decided to rebel. So they come into the Beis HaMikdash. Now the Gemara leaves out a little bit of there was a major wars, major battles. And ultimately, again, the Chashmonaim, it's actually just today, it was in the news that in Ir David, in the city of David, they just found arrowheads that they believe come from the times of the Maccabim, from the Chashmonai revolt. Absolutely incredible. So in any event, so the Chashmonaim rebelled, and they led a successful rebellion against the Syrian Greeks. They come back to the Beis HaMikdash in an effort to go ahead and restart, literally rekindle Jewish life. Badku v'lo matzu ela pach echad shel shemen. They searched, they found only one untainted cruse of oil, one untainted, jug of oil, that had the seal of the Kohen Gadol on it. And we know the story. There was only enough oil to kindle the menorah for one day. A miracle occurred. Ultimately, it remained lit for 8 days, and then the Gemara ends in the subsequent year. They established these days of Chanukah as a Yom Tiv for Hallel and Hoda'ah. And literally, again, Hallel means we recite Hallel. Hoda'ah means in Shemona Esrei, we insert the section of Ala Nisim. Okay, beautiful Gemara. What's the most troubling part of Chanukah? What's the question? What's the overarching question about Chanukah? So first of all, the whole celebration is really focused on the oil. Absolutely no mention of the wars, which is strange, because let's think about it for just a moment, on your miracle meter, How far does the hand of your miracle meter go over this particular miracle? The truth is, no offense to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but I'm not impressed. Meaning what? Okay, it's great. I think we mentioned this last week as well, So fine, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made one jug of oil last for 8 days. That's fantastic. Okay, that's great. Remember, that's presupposing that you take for granted that oil burns at all. This idea that you take an olive, you squeeze olive, you get the liquid, you put a wick in there, you light the wick on fire, and suddenly it burns. That's pretty miraculous. Just because it happens every day. So fine. So God decided to take something miraculous and extend it. If you think about the miracles that we have experienced as a people, this doesn't even show up on the radar, For example, there's no Yom Tov to celebrate that man fell every single morning for 40 years. 3.5 million people were fed every single day with divine bread that fell from the heavens. That's big. There's no miracle to go ahead and celebrate that. And the truth is, you can go through so many miracles that have happened to our people, and yet they don't get their own Yamim Tovim. But the truth is, there's even a deeper, to compound that question. So much has happened since Chanukah. Think about Jewish history. It's incredible. The Chashmonai revolt, they went ahead and rededicated the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash was then standing for a few hundred years after, under Hasmonean rule. Now, that's just a little bit of history. Hasmonean rule did not turn out well, That turned into a debacle, The Chashmonaim dynasty, there's a whole dispute. The Chashmonaim were Kohanim. In Judaism, remember again, monarchy comes from what Shevet? Yehuda, Priesthood, Kahuna, Leviah comes from Levi. There's a purposeful separation between religious authority and what we'll call political authority. Those are divided. The fact that the Chashmonaim seized the monarchy for themselves, it's not so clear that was a good idea. And it doesn't end well. The Chashmonaim monarchy descends into chaos. Ultimately, you know how it ends. You know how the Hasmonean monarchy ends. the Chashmonaim had a slave, a man by the name of Herod. Herod decided he was tired of being a slave, and so he led a revolt against his masters. Herod wiped out the entire Chashmonai family. He wiped out everyone except one girl. Why did he spare this one young lady? Because he thought she was beautiful and he wanted to marry her. The Gemara says she went up to the roof of her home. She said, I am the last member of the Chashmonai family. From this point forward, anyone who claims that they are a Hasmoni and a Chashmonai, know that they are really a slave. And she threw herself down to her death. That's the end of the Chashmonai monarchy, right? That's the same Herod. He wipes out the Hasmonean family. He wipes out most of the Sanhedrin. He decides to do tshuva. That's when he goes in and does a refurbishment of the second Beis Hamikdash. So it's not like the greatest story. It's not the greatest story. And yet, interestingly enough, again, we celebrate it. So what the Gemara is really asking is like this, there's got to be something deeper. In other words, I understand the miracle of the oil. I understand that. And I appreciate it. But that can't be it. My Chanukah, those first two words is such a profound question. It's Chazal, it's the rabbi struggling. What exactly is the nature of this Yom Tov? And by the way, let's take it a step further. If it is about the oil, so what's the message? So what's the message? So what's the mission? So what's the avoda? So the Gemara says, my Chanukah, struggling to understand what is it about this Yom Tov that I'm supposed to take from? How am I supposed to grow? How am I supposed to change? How am I supposed to evolve? What's the message and what's the mission? So I want to share with you a couple of different approaches. And again, we're going to see, as usual, they're not mutually exclusive. They're just different approaches. So take a look at number 2. There's another incredible Gemara in Maseches Yuma. The Gemara says, we've actually done this kapitel of Tehillim in our shir. So the kapitel says, Lam Natseach to the conductor, Al Ayelas HaShachar. Now the way we translate Ayelas HaShachar, and Ayal is a hind, right, the deer, Shachar, the dawn. Who is the deer? Who is the hind of the dawn? So the Gemara understands this by that it's a scriptural allusion to Esther Hamalka, to Queen Esther. Amar Abasi, Lama Nimshula Esther l'Shachar. Why is Esther compared to the dawn? Why is Esther compared to the dawn? Lomar Lacha, Mashachar Sof Kol Halayla, Af Esther Sof Kol Hanisim. To teach us that just as the dawn is the end of night, so too Esther was the last miracle for the Jewish people. In other words, the story of our miracles ends with Esther. Now remember again, just chronologically, remember again, the story of Esther happens when? Right after the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. First temple is destroyed. Jews are sent into exile into Bavel. Already by then it was Paras Umadai, the Persian Median Empire. Right? Remember again, Mordechai was one of the Jews who was exiled. Mordechai was alive while the first Beis Hamikdash was still standing. He's exiled. The story of Esther happens right after the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. That period of destruction lasted how long between first temple and second temple? It's like a Jewish history class, right? 70 years. 70 years. Then the Beis Hamikdash second Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt. So remember again, the story of the Chanukah takes place a few hundred years after Purim. Okay, so now the Gemara says, why is Esther called Ayelas HaShachar? Ultimately, again, because just like the Shachar, just like the dawn is the end of the night, so too Esther is the end of all miraculous activity, of all miracles. Of all miracles. So the Gemara says, really? V'ha'ika Chanukah? What about Chanukah? Right, there's still Chanukah. Like you forgot about Chanukah, the Gemara says, Chanukah happened after Purim. Nitna likas lichtov ka'amrinan. So the Gemara says, you're right, but Esther is actually the last holiday, the last Yom Tov, or the last miraculous event to be included in Tanakh. Tanakh, Megillas Esther is the last official book, so to speak, that's added onto Tanakh. So for example, Chanukah has no sefer. Chanukah has no sefer. Now again, there's Medrash Chanukah, there's the book of the Maccabim, which again, its authenticity or its origin is somewhat disputed. But unlike Purim, which has a Megillah, Chanukah has no Megillah. So it's interesting. So now you see what the Gemara is saying is like this. We thought Purim, like in this grand scheme of things, we thought Purim was the last Yom Tov, because Purim is really the last Yom Tov that has an associated book with it, a Megillah. But the Gemara says, no. Chanukah is the last Yom Tiv. Now, by the way, if we think about that, it's incredibly profound. Chanukah is the last Yom Tiv institutionalized for Klal Yisrael. There's no subsequent Yom Tiv. Again, it's interesting, like you see contemporarily, like there's much dispute that surrounds Yom HaAtzmaut, right? How to celebrate Israel Independence Day. Many who wanted to make it a Yom Tiv, many who objected to it to Yom Tiv. You should just know, even people who object to Yom HaAtzmaut being a Yom Tiv could still be fiercely Zionistic and very much love Eretz Yisrael. There's an issue with adding on additional Yomim Tovim. There's a halachic issue. Again, there's plenty of literature to support it as well, but just pointing out, you see what the Gemara is saying is, it's almost like the Yom Tov book closes with Chanukah. Chanukah is it. That's the last holiday that ultimately, again, it's created for Klal Yisrael. So there's something interesting, that Chanukah is the last, right? And now, by the way, is Chanukah the last miracle that occurred for the Jewish people? No, there have been plenty of miracles. But Chanukah is almost like the last recorded miracle. That's the end. So why is Chanukah the end? So I want to show you something amazing. If you take a look at number 3, this is from the Pachad Yitzchak. The Pachad Yitzchak was Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner, Zecher Tzaddik Kadosh L'Bracha, whose yard site is this week. See, he says something amazing. I'm just going to read a little bit of it inside, the middle of the first line. Echad hamakomos hamiyuchadim ach v'rak leChanukah, lemoed Chanukah, so Hutner points out, it's interesting, Chanukah, as we said before, is the last Yom Tiv. Chanukah is the last Yom Tiv. It's the last one. So Hutner says, Hamuvan hapnimi shal uvda zuhi kim kevias moed Chanukah nigmeru kol hashorashim shal seder zmanim l'doros ad acharis hayomim. Hutner says something amazing. He says, the fact that Chanukah is the last, that means, listen to these words, everything we need to be successful as a people, we have now. Chanukah gave us that last piece of strength. Chanukah gave us that last piece of peoplehood. Chanukah gave us, it's almost like that last spiritual booster shot. That's the end of what we need. And he says something amazing. He says, what do we say in Ma'os Surah? This is so beautiful. Azegmor Bishir Mizmar, Chanukas HaMizbeach. Right? Ma'os Surah is one of those things. Everybody loves to sing it. No one has any idea what it's talking about. Right? So listen to this phrase. Az Egmor, then I will be finished. Bishir, with the song, Bishir Mizmar, Chanukas HaMizbeach. Rav Hutner says, what does that mean? Listen to this. Az Egmor, then I'll be done. When will we be done? Bechanukas HaMizbeach. When the Beis HaMikdash is rededicated by Chanukah. That's what that phrase is saying. Chanukah is the close of miracles. Now, you understand when I say the close of miracles, miracles happen every single day. It means that Chanukah is the last Yom Tov, the last holiday centered on a miracle created by Chazal, created by the rabbis. That's it. Azek more. With Chanukah, we're finished. With Chanukah, we're done. He goes on, he says, Kilomar, at Kvius Moed Chanukah, Hayachaser Od Amud Echad, Asher Alav Yamod Hageshem Avil Acharis Hayamim. This is so profound. He said, before Chanukah, there was something missing for us. Before Chanukah, we were not nationally complete. With the Yom Tov of Chanukah, says Rav Hutner, everything we need to get us to where? To get us to where? To get us to Mashiach, to get us to Messianic times, we now have. Chanukah is the final puzzle piece. It's the final thing we needed in order to be able to cross the Messianic finish line. Im kaviyos moed Chanukah, nechonehi mesila. So with the establishment of the Yom Tov of Chanukah, the pathway is now straight. Litzot aleha ad hagimar shel Chanukah ha'asida asher tigmor b'shir mizmar. With the establishment of the Yom Tov of Chanukah, we now have everything we need in order to be successful until the Messianic era. This is one of these things where right now we don't even know what he's talking about, right? What are you even referring to? But what just, before you even understand it, what an incredible thing to think about. Chanukah is the last miracle. Rav Hutner says, up until Chanukah, there was something missing from the national consciousness, something missing from the national neshama of Klal Yisrael that left us deficient. With the establishment of the Yom Tov of Chanukah, we're now complete, and I have everything I need in order to reach the Messianic finish line. Okay, but this is where Rav Hutner ends. What doesn't he tell us? So what's the final lesson? What is it? So what did Chanukah give us? What is it that was missing that Chanukah gave us that now ultimately, again, I'm totally complete? So take a look at number 4. The Bnei Yissaschar says something so beautiful. He establishes over here, listen to this. Mavar, D'lachein lo nitna Chanukah likasev b'nevuah. So remember again, as we mentioned before, the story of Chanukah is not recorded. You see, it's interesting. We often assume that the Purim story was the first story to happen without prophecy, right? Because there's no prophet in the story of the Megillah. But there is prophecy. How do we know this prophecy? Who wrote the Megillah? Wrote the Megillah? Esther Malka wrote the Megillah. Now, there are details that are recorded in the Megillah that Esther could not have known, right? Parts of the story that she could not have known that Achashverosh couldn't fall asleep at night, right? She couldn't have known that, right? She couldn't have known about the story, about the plot between there are things that happened in the Megillah that Esther could not have known about. So the Gemara says the only way to explain it is that Esther nichtava beruach hakodesh. Esther was written, Megillah says it was written with a spirit of prophecy. So it turns out then that the first story, without any semblance of prophecy, the first national event without any prophecy, without a Navi, without anything, without a book of Tanakh, is what? Is Chanukah. Is Chanukah. He says, Mavar delachin lo nitna Chanukah likase b'nevuah. Kineis zeh. Because what is the entire message of Chanukah? Kineis zeh lahoros ba sha'az nifsika hanavuah ve'in chazon nifratz. Because you know what happens in Chanukah? The miracle of Chanukah happens without a prophet. It happens without a Navi. You know what else it happens without? What else don't you have during Chanukah? A Beis HaMikdash. Now, what I mean, you don't have a Beis HaMikdash? Remember, if you think about the way the story of Chanukah unfolds, the end of the Chanukah story is a rededication of the Beis HaMikdash. But throughout the story, when the Jews are waging their battles, there is no functional Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash has been defiled. The altar has been used for pagan sacrifice. You know, everyone thinks that the big miracle of Chanukah was that, they couldn't find, there was no oil, they found oil, they came in. There was something else that was missing besides oil in the Beis HaMikdash. You know what else was missing? The menorah was missing, because the menorah was made of solid gold. The Greeks had taken it out. There's a whole story about what Chashmonaim did for that first menorah that first year. So if you think about it, the Bnei Yissaschar says something absolutely amazing, which is, the miracle of Chanukah unfolds without a prophet, without a Navi, and it unfolds also without a functional Beis HaMikdash, which is an incredible metaphor or a foreshadow for the future of the Jewish condition to this very day. To this day, how do we operate? We operate without prophecy, and we operate without a Beis HaMikdash. Now, we're often not conscious of this because it's been thousands of years since we've had a Navi, thousands of years since we've had a Beis HaMikdash. But Chanukah was the first Yom Tov that occurred without a prophet, any form of prophecy, and without a functional Beis HaMikdash. So listen to this. So do you want to know and yet, without a prophet, and without a Beis HaMikdash, what happened? What happened? We were successful. And Chanukah teaches us this dramatic lesson. Sometimes in life we encounter a challenge, and we say to ourselves, I don't have the tools to meet this challenge. I don't have the tools. And what does Chanukah teach us? Whatever tools you need to meet your life challenge, you have them. And even if you think you're lacking something, you may be lacking something, but you don't need whatever it is you're lacking in order to be successful in the particular chapter of life you are in. That is the Chanukah story. And remember, says Rav Hutner, this was the last piece of the Jewish psyche. Because remember again, what is Chanukah? All of our Yom Tovim are so interesting, right? We come to the end of a Yom Tov, what happens? We celebrate, everything is wonderful, everything is beautiful. And often, like with every Yom Tov, there's always like a little bit of a pang, right? We get to the end of the Megillah, Shoshanas Yaakov Tzala V'Samecha, everyone's happy, everyone's good. And we always say, everyone's happy except who? Except who? Except Esther, right? Everybody's having a great time, except the heroine of the story, who's locked in a marriage she doesn't want to be in, locked in a life she doesn't want to be in. And again, she's stuck. She's stuck. Chanukah comes, we celebrate, but we know again, ultimately again, how the story unfolds. And how does the story unfold? Beis HaMikdash stands for a few hundred more years, but then there is a steady decline about what's happening. And remember again, the Chanukah story is an incredible redemption, incredible salvation, but it's also the beginning of the decline that ultimately leads to the diaspora in which we currently find ourselves. But Chanukah armed us with this last piece that we need for life success. How are we going to make it to the messianic finish line? How are we going to stay strong throughout this long, dark night of galus, of diaspora? How are we going to go through the peaks and valleys of the Jewish condition that take us to? How are we going to do it? How do we do it? Chanukah. Because Chanukah teaches us, whatever tools you need to make it through your current difficult predicament, you have it. You have it. If you would have asked the Chashmonaim, do you have all the tools you need? Think about it just a moment. Right? You were to stop the Maccabim on the way to battle. Say, hey guys, you have everything you need? You have everything you need? Right? And they would have said, nothing. We don't have anything. First of all, we have no combat skills. Right? They invented guerrilla warfare. Right? No one ever fought like this before. Right? We're not a trained army. Their weaponry was probably much outmatched by the Greeks. Right? And by the way, we have no Navi and we have no Beis HaMikdash. The two things that have been the backbone of Jewish success from the times of Moshe Rabbeinu up until now, a prophet and a Beis HaMikdash. And we Chashmonaim, we have neither. We have neither. That's what they would have said going out to battle. And yet they're successful. And that becomes the metaphor, and that becomes the message, and that becomes the mission for us as individuals and for us as a nation. We all face circumstances that we feel are beyond us. We stare, circumstances come to us, or situations present themselves to us, and I feel like if only I had the tools to be able to deal with this. And I know what the tools are. If I had this, then I would be ready to go out and deal with this challenge. And Chanukah teaches us, if you're in the challenge, you have the difficulty, that means you already have the tools. Whatever you need to meet life's challenges, you already have that. It says Rav Hutner, that's the last message, the last codified message, because it's that message ultimately that preserves us. It's that message that buoys us. It's that message that inspires us and has inspired us since the time of Chanukah all the way until the Meretz Hashem one day soon we will cross that messianic finish line. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2. Take a look at number 5. So the Baal Shem Tov, actually, you can skip take a look at number 5. The Baal Shem Tov says something very beautiful. The Baal Shem, actually skip to number 6, the Bnei Yissaschar again. Bnei Yissaschar. So this is absolutely beautiful. So the Bnei Yissaschar writes over here, remember, and everyone's struggling with the same thing, which is trying to understand what is the message and what is the mission of Chanukah. It can't just be about a little bit of oil lasting 8 days. It has to be something more. So the Bnei Yissaschar, once again writes in number 6, O Kasav Harav HaKadosh. So he's quoting over here the Baal Shem Tov. So it was the Baal Shem Tov in number 5, just saving you. So let's look at number 6. So Baal Shem Tov writes, O Kasav Harav HaKadosh, Tiknu Lamed Vav Neros. So watch this. It's good Chanukah trivia. Right? The total number of candles that you light over Chanukah is 36. Right? 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. 36 candles over the course of Chanukah. 36. Okay, so what's the symbolism of 36? Watch this. Kineged ha'ar harishon, sheshimesh la'adam harishon lamed vav shaos. This is absolutely beautiful. A little bit going back to Bereshis for just a moment. We know that in the beginning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created art, created light. Created light. The Medrash brings down that light that Hashem created was not simply a light of illumination, but it was a light of enlightenment as well. In other words, with that light, you were not only able to actually physically see, but you were able to spiritually, cognitively, intellectually, emotionally see things in a deeper fashion as well. Hashem created that light on day number 1. After he created that light, he said, you know what? That light is too pure for this world. So what did he do? He pulled it out. He pulled it out. He replaces it with the sun, the moon, the stars. He pulls out the original light, because remember again, light comes even before the luminaries. So that first light was this light of enlightenment, not just a light of illumination, but a light of enlightenment. He pulls it out and he reserves that light for the righteous in the Messianic era. That light is saved for Amos HaMashiach. So the Medrash writes, so how long was that original light in the world for? How long was it in the world for? The Medrash says 36 hours. 36 hours. And therefore the Bnei Yissaschar, according to the Baal Shem Tov, says the 36 candles of Chanukah correspond to the 36 hours in which the world had this light of enlightenment. 36, 36. On a deeper level, what the Bnei Yissaschar are saying is, and you know this, by the way, I always tell my children, like, there's something, a lot of times what happens is, right, we light the Chanukah candles, light the menorah, and then what happens? You sing a little bit, and what often happens? Right there, everybody's running, right? You have to understand, part of the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is just to sit and stare at the candles. You don't have to daven. Davening is good. Tillim is beautiful. Again, Nishmas is beautiful. There's so many beautiful things to say during Chanukah. Part of the Chanukah experience is just to sit and look at the candles. You know what's even better? Look at it in silence. It doesn't have to be a conversation. It doesn't have to be a song. I know some people are uncomfortable. It's good to get comfortable with silence in general. The world would be a much better place if people were comfortable with silence. But so much of Chanukah is that avodah of just sitting and staring at the candles. The Zohar writes that staring at the candles actually has a physical and spiritual rehabilitative effect on a person. Why is that? Because those candles, the light of the Chanukah candles, is somehow connected and tethered to the original light of Maaseh Bereshis, of creation. That light of the menorah is not a regular light. It's not even the light of your Shabbos candles. That's a different light. Shabbos candles are beautiful. Yom Tov candles are beautiful. The menorah is something different. The light of the menorah is the light of the beginning of creation. It's the light of the beginning of time. It's a light not simply of illumination, but it's a light of enlightenment. One is able, on a deeper level, what is the Bnei Yissaschar saying? So if you take a look at number 7, the Beis Avraham writes, Chanukah shuzman hischadshus. Remember again, we call the Yontav of Chanukah Chanukah, so we normally assume it's a contraction of two words, Chanu, Chafhei. Right? The Maccabim, they were fighting, they rested, they stopped fighting on the 25th. Chanu, they rested, Chafhei on the 25th of Kislev. But Chanukah as a word itself just means a rededication. Or to say a little bit differently, a hischadshus, a rejuvenation. You see the power of Chanukah, you know what the real power of Chanukah is? The real power of Chanukah is the ability to start over. You see, we often think about the tabla rasa, right, the blank slate, the new beginnings, as something associated with Chodesh Elul or associated with Rosh Hashanah. But the beautiful part in Yiddishkeit is there's a recognition that how often can you have a new beginning? How often can you have a new beginning? As often as you want it, right? Even multiple times on one day. You could say, you know what? Whoop, this is the line. The past is the past. From this moment, it's my brand new future. Brand new me, brand new life. Chanukah gives you access to the original light of creation. And what can you do with the original light of creation? Choose to recreate yourself. You know, you hear people saying all the time, oh, if only I could start over. If only I could start over. You could start over whenever you want, right? Now, you may not be able to start certain things in your life over, but Lamaisa, the person you want to be, who you are, your identity, the life you want to forge and create for yourself, that you could start over at any given moment. And there are certain times of the year that are more ripe for this rejuvenation, that are more ripe for this restart, that are more ripe for this renaissance. So Rosh Hashanah is one of them, right? Yom Kippur is one of them. Sukkot is one of them. So is Chanukah. Hischadshus, when you have the opportunity to bring the original light, understand what you're doing. When I light my menorah, what I'm doing is I'm bringing the original light of creation into my home. My home, which is like at the center of my life, I'm bringing the original light of creation into my life, which means now that original light, when the universe started, is shining in my dining room. And again, the Bnei Yissaschar writes, if you want to tap into that and you want to start over, you can. Who amongst us doesn't have things that they wish they could change about themselves? I don't mean things you wish you could change in someone else. That we have a longer list of, right? I'm talking about the things about me. I have things about me that I want to change, but the truth is, it's so interesting because often we don't really believe we could change, right? We talk about change a lot. We don't deep down, I kind of feel like this is what it is. This is what it is. This is who I am. I could tweak a little bit here, tweak a little bit this. But if you're asking me like for a cathartic, personalistic overhaul, I'm not really capable of that. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We just have to choose to tap into that energy. So come Sunday night, you're going to have that one ner. That one ner is the light of creation, the original light that no one else in the world got to see. Because Kadosh Baruch Hu took it out after 36 hours and hid it away for the tzaddikim. But now it's going to be in my home. And that light is going to be in my home for the next 8 days. While that light is there, with that light, I can go ahead and I change. And I can affect whatever level of change I want to in myself. In myself. Again, let's be clear. You can't always change some of the circumstances of your life. But I could always change who and what I am. And by the way, now you understand another halacha, which is, kind of when people think about the picturesque way to light the menorah, right? What's the picturesque way you light the menorah, right? If you were producing like the perfect, menorah video, so how do you do it? The families huddle together, the lights are out, right? It's dark, and then it sounds so beautiful, except that it's asr. And the reason for that is because you're not allowed to derive benefit from the light of the menorah. You can't light the menorah in a dark room. You have to actually light the menorah in a well-illuminated room. But now I understand. Because if you light your menorah in a dark room, you're relegating that light to a light of illumination, right? If I use that light to read by, to learn by, to eat dinner by, then it's just like any other set of candles. It's just like anything else. It's just like any other light of illumination. And that's a disservice to the Chanukah candles. The Chanukah candles are not a light for illumination. It's a light of enlightenment. That's why I'm not supposed to derive physical benefit from it, because again, then I'm relegating it to the status of just a regular candle and depriving myself of the opportunity to literally connect to the original light of creation. Because if I could connect to that original light of creation, then I can remake myself. That's lesson number 2 about Chanukah. That ultimately, again, if you want to go ahead and renew and recreate and remake you, that ability is there, and the opportunity presents itself every night of Chanukah. Every night of Chanukah. Approach number 3, and then we'll bring everything together. So if you take a look at the Lev Simcha is the Ger Rebbe. He says in number 8 something so beautiful. He makes a statement. And to appreciate the statement, we'll have to just kind of branch out a little bit. He says, Kimaisa katan b'yamim elu, moel harbe, this is ma'od. He says, a small act during these days goes very far. A small act during Chanukah goes very far. Okay, so true, but what does it mean specifically for Chanukah? Skip a little bit for just a moment. Take a look at number 10. This is from the Medrash Chanukah. Look what the Medrash writes. So this is talking about after the Chashmonaim defeated the Greeks. So they defeated the Greeks, they go there, they first return to their families. After they return to their families, they come to the Beis HaMikdash. V'lo matzu shemen tahar. They couldn't find any pure oil. Ella pach kitana shahaya b'shisin hamizbeach. Now, if you'll notice, by the way, if you don't have to compare, I'll compare for you, but if you contrast the sources, in source number 1 and source number 10. Source number 1 is the Gemara, telling the story of Chanukah. Source number 10 is the Medrash, telling the story of Chanukah. And you'll notice a one-word difference. In the Gemara, it says when they came back to the Beis HaMikdash, what did they find? Pach echad shal shemen. 1 jug of oil. Bless you. In the Medrash, what does it say? They found pach kitana, a small jug of oil. A small jug of oil. And what happened? So the Gemara says, the Medrash is number 10. So listen to this. So says the Ger Rebbe, Lev Simcha, something so beautiful. It says, you know what the message of Chanukah is? That a small act could generate so much light. that one little thing could make such a dramatic difference. We often assume that dramatic differences occur because of dramatic large-scale activity. And Chanukah teaches us just the opposite. Chanukah says, look at one little jug, pach kitana, one little jug of oil. What did one little jug of oil do? Look at all the messages that one little jug of oil gave to us. Look at all the chizuk that one little jug of oil gave to us. Look at the dramatic difference in the national fabric of Klal Yisrael. One little jug of oil. Says the Lev Simcha, that's the message. Ki ma'aseh katan biyamim elu. One small act during these days, mo'il harbe ma'od, has such a dramatic effect. The avodah of Chanukah is not to do something magnanimous. The avodah of Chanukah is not to take on or to change something big. The avodah of Chanukah, says Lev Simcha, is do something small. Because the whole message of Chanukah is that small actions can have dramatic effects. And I'll show you something amazing. If you take a look at number 10, so this is going back in the same Gemara that we saw in number 1, but just a different part of the Gemara. The Gemara says, Tan Rabbanan, mitzvahs ner Chanukah. How do you fulfill the mitzvah of menorah? How do you fulfill the mitzvah of ner Chanukah? So the Gemara says, ner ishu beison. So technically speaking, all you need for Chanukah is one candle per household, right? And that's one candle every night. So on night 1, one candle. On night 2, one candle. On night 4, good, you got the hang of this, right? One candle. That's the core mitzvah. That's all you have to do. One candle every single night, and not everyone their own candle. One candle for the household. Then the Gemara says, Mahadrin, the next level is Ner L'chol Echad Ve'echad, everyone lights their own candle. And then Mahadrin and Mahadrin is everyone lights additional candles per night. I want to tell you something amazing. Nowhere else in halacha do you find the halacha espoused like this, where the halacha first is, here's the minimum you could do, and then we'll build up the minimum, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little more. Generally what happens in halacha is Chazal state an expectation. If you can't fulfill the expectation, then there are ways that you could fulfill the mitzvah b'di eved, in a less than optimal fashion. Chanukah is the one situation where the Gemara actually phrases it as, here is the bare minimum you can do in order to go out and fulfill your obligation. And then it builds out after that. Why does it state it like this? Because the whole message of Chanukah is that even one candle per household every single night, even one small action has the ability to affect so much dramatic change. We often think that in order to make a difference in our lives, or in order to make a difference in the world, you have to do something big. You have to do something that everyone's going to know about. You have to do something that's going to change the fabric. You have to solve a crisis, right? You have to come up with a great. If you could solve a crisis, fantastic. If you could do something big, all the power to you. But so much beautiful personalistic change occurs just when you make small changes in life. And says the Lev Simcha, the avodah of Chanukah is not the Herculean personalistic lift. That's not what this is. It's not I want to change 57 things about my personality, right? And I want to change, 12 things about the way that I live. And the truth is, I want to do a 180 over here and a 180 over it. That's not Chanukah. You know what Chanukah is? A little tweak here, a little tweak there. Because the entire message of this Yom Tiv is one little jug of oil, one little change, one little life adjustment, one pivot could fundamentally change the trajectory of your life and the life of all those around you. 3 distinct lessons. And now if we bring this all together, now we begin to really understand what the Gemara is saying, right? Let's go back for just a moment. So now again, 43 minutes ago, so we asked again, my Chanukah. What, right? The Gemara asks, what is Chanukah? And we understand what the Gemara is asking is not a simple historical question. We know what the historical importance of Chanukah is. What the Gemara is asking is, what is the message and the mission? What is it that I'm supposed to do? How am I supposed to grow? How am I supposed to learn? It can't just be about oil burning for 8 days. And so it turns out that we have 3 major messages and missions from Chanukah. Message number 1. Sometimes we think we are without the tools to face our life challenges. Chanukah teaches us, whatever tools you need, you have. Now, again, it doesn't mean I don't want more tools, and it doesn't mean I can't benefit from more tools. But whatever tools you already have, that's all you need in order to be able to face your challenge. What an empowering message. Because how often does it happen in life that we face crisis and like the first thing that comes out of our mouth is, right? I can't handle this. I can't, and by the way, that's normal, that's natural, and it's okay to have that reflexive reaction, but then I take a deep breath and I say, okay, Chanukah was the last Yom Tov. Chanukah, like Rav Hutner said, was the last piece that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me, and that will help me pass, that will help me get past the messianic finish line. Chanukah gave me the last booster shot of spiritual strength that I need. And it teaches me whatever tools I need to meet life's challenges, I have them already. I have them already. I'm good. And even if I feel toolless, right? And even if I feel like I'm unprepared, I may feel unprepared, but I have to wrap my head around the fact I'm prepared. That's message number one. Message two, you can always start over. What a beautiful, beautiful message. You could always start over. The candles of Chanukah correspond to the 36 hours of the first light. When you kindle your menorah, you are bringing in that light, the original light of creation, into your home. You're bringing in the light of the beginning of the world into your home. So first of all, don't light and rush, light and bask. Take the time just to stare. It's okay to stare, right? Take the time, ultimately, again, just to be together with the candles. And remember, the same way that light of the beginning of creation now shines in your home, if there's something about your life you want to recreate, you can. Chanukah is the time to do it. Chanukah is the time of hischachus, of renewal and rededication. We have the ability to renew and rededicate parts of our lives as well. And finally, message number three, a little bit of effort goes a long way. Sometimes in order to affect real life change, you don't have to do something dramatic. I know it sounds a little contradictory to what we just said before. If you want to start all over, you can, but don't think you have to start all over in order to affect real change. The whole message of Chanukah is a little bit of oil goes a long way. A little bit of effort, a little change, a little something. Just think about this. And again, this is something to think about during Chanukah and before, when you're staring into the candles. What's something little I want to change? Maybe I want to be more friendly. Maybe I'm going to spend less time on social media. Maybe I'm going to go ahead and give a bit more tzedakah. Maybe I'm going to be the kind of person that lifts up the phone when I hear someone is sitting Shiva, even if I don't know the person. Maybe I'm going to spend a little bit more time on dav, whatever it is, all little things. But to go ahead and affect a little bit of change, find your little jug of oil. And when you open the seal on that oil, when you open the seal on that little bit of change, there is no telling what amount of light you could bring into your life and to the lives of those around you. The three messages and the three missions of Chanukah. So we should be Zilcha Emeretz Hashem, that as we come Sunday night to Emeretz Hashem, kindle the menorah, and really like Chanukah is difficult. Last year we were Zocha to be in Eretz Yisrael Chanukah. We actually got in, this is when they closed the country, I think the second time. We got in the Thursday before Chanukah. They shut down the airport again on Sunday of Chanukah. The beauty of being in Eretz Yisrael on Chanukah is you feel it. You feel it, right? In other words, it's Chanukah. It's everywhere. You feel like a Yom Tov. So our job is to create that for ourselves here. You could create that for yourself here also. So no, it's not going to, if you look at the MTA buses are not going to say Chag Sameach on it, right? It's not going to say, right? You're not going to get that. But you could create your own energy. You could bring that Kedusha into your home. You can make it something special. It shouldn't be light the menorah, dinner, right? And everybody's out, right? No, it's an experience. It's an experience. If it means you have to eat something before so that everybody is normal, right, and has their wits about them, then that's what you do. But maximize the experience. And when we come Sunday night, understand what it is that's happening. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors, I'll just end with this. Our ancestors, when the Maccabim came to the Beis HaMikdash, so what did they find there? What did they find? So they found the desecrated Mizbeach. They found there was no menorah there. You know what they did? The Gemara says, the Medrash says, for the first menorah, they took their spears. They bound the spears together and they made a menorah. They had nothing. They had nothing. Tired from battle, having lost so many people, both to death, to war, and to assimilation. Somehow, they pulled it off. Somehow, again, they internalized all of these messages and they lived it. And we, who Baruch Hashem, could perform this mitzvah from the comfort of our homes. All we need to do is take the time, create the physical space, the emotional space, and the cognitive space to really be part of this experience. And there is no telling what we could accomplish. We should be Zochem Yirtzeh Hashem, by internalizing all of these lessons, internalizing the messages and the missions of Chanukah. We should be Zochem Yirtzeh Hashem, that our collective light should finally join together to create the beautiful light, the light of the Mashiach, the light of the third Beis HaMikdash, and be Zochem Yirtzeh Hashem, to see the Kohen Gadol kindle his menorah, B'mehera B'yameinu. Amen.